With the grand opening of our largest and most advanced enclosure to date, Keystone Park is expecting a surge of new guests arriving at any moment now. You can only ever make a first impression once, and with the sheer amount of people visiting our zoo for the first time today, it's crucial that we're on our A game. To make sure all goes well, we hired a brand new keeper who specializes in pinnipeds. He's a very hard worker, and is running the habitat with great efficiency and enthusiasm. Thankfully, it seems like both the seals and sea lions who call this habitat home approve. As long as there's plenty of fish for them to eat, they're always happy. While the above-surface viewing is certainly spectacular in its own way, to see the true scale of their habitat, you'll have to travel beneath. Walking through our underwater tunnel is sure to be an absolutely unforgettable experience. I think it's about time we put some names at these faces. Name suggestions for any animal in the zoo are always welcome in the comments below. Pez is unique among the gray seal at Keystone because he can commonly be found above the surface of the water, indulging on his favorite frozen fish block. Like a majority of our other seals and sea lions, Aeltos prefers to be in the water. She's a really graceful swimmer, and incredibly fun to watch. Speaking of graceful swimmers, allow me to introduce you to Jip. Like Aeltos, she spends a majority of her time in the lagoon. Out of all of the sea lions, so far Valentino seems to be the dominant male. I'm not really sure how that ended up working out, because he spends a majority of his time on land sleeping. As predicted, the seal and sea lion enclosure was an absolutely massive success with the public crowd. The exterior viewing is only the start of the fun though, because today we're also introducing our animal talks. On the far left side of the seal and sea lion's habitat, you'll find a stage for our first ever talk. Seats filled up very quickly, a lot faster than we envisioned in fact. This is a good thing because it proves people still care about education at zoos. One of the easiest ways we can all protect animals from here at home is by simply learning about them and educating yourself on various species. I learned this firsthand, as this entire stage and animal talk was directly inspired by the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. After I donated, they even gave me this really cool pin. Keystone Park's first ever animal talk was an overwhelming success, and our brand new educator did an excellent job. Merging education with entertainment is key in retention. I'm so proud to be able to have this animal talk in Keystone Park's catalog now. Hopefully one day we can add some more, but for now, this'll do. Our new animal talk isn't the only thing bringing guests to Keystone Park. Matter of fact, we have a massive announcement from our grizzly bear enclosure. Just a few short months ago, when our Tio arrived at Keystone Park, we were surprised to find out that she was actually carrying a cub. After a very quick pregnancy, the cub was born a perfectly healthy bear. She is an absolute ball of energy, and completely attached to our Tio at the hip. And of course, like mentioned before, name suggestions are always welcome. An outsider might view this as a big happy grizzly bear family, however that actually couldn't be further from the truth. If you'll recall from the Zoopedia, grizzly bear are solitary animals, and all babies become outsiders once they grow up. Unfortunately, Nanook is going to have to be off exhibit for a while. Matter of fact, he's being sent to a neighboring zoo. In time, Nanook will return and the cub will be sent off to either the wild or a zoo of its own. For now, she needs to learn survival skills from her mother, and so far she seems to be a quick learner. The birth of this beautiful cub of course awards us with the Bronze Grizzly Bear badge. Of course, it's going to be sad one day when we inevitably have to let her go, but for now we just need to enjoy her presence. Commissioning some toys and stuffed animals of this bear cub also couldn't hurt. Zoos do need money to take care of all of our animals, and grizzly bears certainly aren't cheap. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. By engaging with the content, you're telling YouTube to push this video out to more people. The more people that watch the videos, the more videos I can make, so everybody wins. For now though, we should probably get to building. It's about time we add another rodent species to Keystone. Meet the Black-Tailed Prairie Dog. The IUCN considers them of least concern, and the Zoopedia describes them as abundant across their habitat. This is very good news. Correct me if I'm wrong, but prairie dogs might be the smallest animal in the entire game, meaning they don't need very much space at all, only 180 square meters with no water, no deep dive, and no climbing. This'll be an easy build. It says here that they're social animals, usually living in large groups that are called towns. Typically they have one dominant male per harem, which means there's one male surrounded by a bunch of females. In terms of breeding, it looks like mature males related to the alpha become outsiders, so we'll have to remember that. These are going to be a perfect animal to add to Keystone Park because the Zoopedia directly describes them as a keystone species, and if you don't know what a keystone species is, it's considered an organism that helps define an entire ecosystem. Think about how a beaver's dam helps create the wetlands. That's why they're a great example of a keystone species, and also our unofficial mascot. It looks like the prairie dog does have some cohabitation with the American bison and the striped skunk. The striped skunk already lives here with our raccoon, and the American bison will live here soon. Just not today. To the left of the wetlands and south of the grizzly bear habitat lies the future location of the American frontier, Keystone Park's newest section. Prairie dog are incredibly small animals, so I wanted to incorporate a little bit of elevation into this habitat so the guests are viewing them almost from an upward angle, so the prairie dogs are going to be about at eye level when viewing them. Whenever modifying the terrain, it gets a little bit finicky when you get close to the path. You can't necessarily put terrain right over the path, so we're going to have to find a way to get creative in order to make it look good. Luckily, I happen to know a trick exactly for this, and we've used this in the past couple episodes, so you should be familiar with it too. We'll simply take this limestone floor and place it all above the path, but just slightly so you can't see the path, but it's still there so guests can use it. By placing the path right along the terrain, it'll look like the guests are going to be able to go right up to the prairie dogs and see them from close up, despite the actual path being a little bit behind. This is looking better already, and we can clearly see where the layout of the habitat is going to be. I think next we're going to have to make a fence that keeps the prairie dogs in and the guests out. By make, I meant borrow, and by borrow, I mean steal from the capybaras. They won't mind, I promise. They have much more important things to do. Reusing parts of your zoo like this isn't necessarily lazy as long as you mix up the presentation. For example, our capybara enclosure was surrounded by faux rocks and a lot of foliage, so unless we do exactly that, this habitat's going to look different enough to where you wouldn't even notice the fence reusage. Changing up the height of the fence is also going to do a lot, because this one is significantly higher than the capybaras. You're not going to be able to look over this. Instead, you look through it. The only problem is, despite using our limestone trick, the terrain still looks a bit weird. In fact, it has these strange triangle patterns on it. We're gonna have to find a way to cover that up, but I can't really think of one now. Let's focus on something else first. Whenever building for a smaller species, like the black-tailed prairie dogs in Planet Zoo, I always like to incorporate a backstage into their habitat. It's way less time-consuming and a whole lot easier to make a highly detailed building for a small species like this, as opposed to making a backstage for an African elephant. The build overall wasn't anything too difficult, mainly utilizing the grid and a lot of base game pieces, other than the plaster walls that are from the Africa pack. One of my absolute favorite tricks in Planet Zoo that I've used for over a year now is incorporating the habitat gate into the actual build, so when the keeper walks in, it's physically animated. Doing this also forces you early to think about where your path is going to be, which makes the build flow together a lot easier in the long run. If you know the rough outline of your habitat already, now's also an excellent time to get the null barrier in. The building and habitat are obviously a little bit rough around the edges yet, but what's important is now we can clearly see where the habitat is going to be, so now we can go crazy with details. Before working on the foliage and the interior of the habitat, I want to completely finalize the exterior. To do this, first we're going to have to extend the wooden supports just a little bit. After that was complete, I utilized the Align to Surface feature in the Advanced Movement menu and placed these rocks at about a 45-degree angle, completely cutting off all of the soil from view. After the rocks were in place, I tried my best to blend it into the limestone using the exact same species of temperate rock. They're not called prairie dogs because they live in the Rocky Mountains. We're going to be using a lot of rocks later in the habitat to help detail the ground, so to avoid using too many right now, I made the sides of the glass wall out of these plaster pieces, using the exact same shade we made on our backstage building. The prairie dogs definitely won't be able to escape now, and I think it looks pretty good. We did a great job of avoiding using too many rocks, and now we can use even more on the inside and make it look natural. To start off the habitat, I used a feature that I rarely ever use. Matter of fact, it's probably my least used terrain feature in the entire game, the Roughen Terrain Editor. If you know anything about prairie dogs, it's likely that they burrow absolutely everywhere. They spend a majority of their time underground, so I wanted to mimic this by making their terrain look less than perfect. To eliminate any jagged edges or areas that could potentially harm the prairie dogs, I went over with a very small smooth layer just to ensure that it was safe. I then made the habitat even smaller by eliminating this awkward back corner. We're going to fill it up with mulch eventually, and this is where the bigger plants in the habitat are going to go that could also potentially hurt the prairie dogs. They're so small and delicate, we have to be very careful with them. Here I make a critical mistake. I've been wanting to build for prairie dogs for some time, and I have an area in the very back corner of the map where I keep workshop items I find that I think will work exceptionally well for species I have plans to build for, the prairie dogs being one of them. Unfortunately, this is the large burrow. The prairie dogs can't access this, they can only use the small version. I don't realize this until the end of the video, but I fixed it off screen in between episodes. The workshop item had these faux rocks that are pretty much the exact same shade as the temperate rocks that we've been using, so I scattered them all about the habitat. I'm going to use these in a lot more builds. I then decided to blend the temperate rocks into the back of the grizzly bear enclosure. I used the exact same trick we did to eliminate that awkward corner by first placing temperate rocks, then doing a fine layer of mulch that we can later plant some trees on. I took the bushes and shrubs that are visible from the back of the grizzly bear enclosure, duplicated them, and made them climb down the rocks from the grizzly enclosure and into the prairie dog one. I wanted to give this build a slightly arid feeling, but I didn't want to dip too much into the entire desert aspect, so I added a few little dead logs all around the enclosure. Afterwards, I came in with an entire layer of light soil, eliminating all of the heavy soil. I then came back in with some heavy soil right around the burrow to make it appear that the prairie dogs can walk in and out of it. After that, I added very small layers of grass all around that I'll later plant with buffalo grass. By placing this grass now, I know exactly where I'm going to put buffalo grass and more detailed foliage later. That's not buffalo grass. To maintain the arid feeling, I added a lot of dead and parched grass over by the fallen logs. This directly contrasts with the more lush areas that we already placed the grass in the terrain editor, and take a wild guess what we used to cover that up. Easily my favorite detail of the entire prairie dog habitat is how I utilized these fig roots, merging them in with the rock and the plants. It was a whole lot of fun to make a less lush habitat. Stepping out of your comfort zone and building something that you're not necessarily used to doing is a great way to improve as a builder in general. I think the habitat looks pretty good. There's only a few key details we're missing. Enrichment items. Let's add a melon feeder, a tunnel, and even a water bowl for the prairie dogs to drink out of. That's a lot better. I added a little bit more buffalo grass and even some nettle plants, along with some more rocks. Unfortunately now the building is a bit of an eyesore. Let's fix that before we let the prairie dogs in. I wanted to first beef up the plaster walls. They looked a bit puny and we're going to be upgrading this building, so we want everything to fit in. I also want to use a bit more brown in the actual building, and having a lot of brown over here is going to be an easy way to segue into it. I started off the building by adding 2 windows to the side and 1 on the front. After those were in place, I recolored some gutters the exact same shade of brown as the windows and added them all over the trims of the roof. I don't necessarily consider myself to be great at building actual structures in Planet Zoo. I mainly specialize in foliage and rock work. However, one thing that I like to do to make my buildings more realistic is always add in a gutter system. In real life, you need this, otherwise you're going to get water damage, so it makes sense to have it in Planet Zoo. Taking a break from the building, I found this excellent build on the workshop that was actually on the front page. It has a ton of cool custom education signs. Not sure what I said to absolutely infuriate this prairie dog, but we're going to be using him nonetheless. Seriously, why does he look so mad? Shifting focus back to the building, I utilized a lot of these surface damage decals to make it almost look like the rocks have damaged the plaster. In an attempt to add some depth to the build, I added a different type of damage that didn't necessarily go quite as deep. If you ever have a giant facade of a building and you're not sure what to do with it, put some ivy there. It looks really nice. I'm really happy with this. Small habitats are so much fun to build because you can pack a ton of detail into a small space. I'm sure the guests are going to enjoy this, despite it being around some stiff competition, like our grizzly bear and our moose. I think the prairie dogs are on their way though. We should probably prepare for their arrival. Welcome our new burrowing friends to the zoo. Meet the Black-Tailed Prairie Dog. They quickly got used to their new habitat, scanning absolutely every inch for danger. This is completely natural behavior, and despite there being 2 grizzly bears like 20 feet away from them, they didn't seem to mind. Something like a grizzly bear wouldn't even really be a threat to a prairie dog, as they can always retreat into their burrow. Prairie dogs instead typically fear animals like snakes that can actively pursue them into their burrows. We currently have 4 Black-Tailed Prairie Dogs at Keystone Park, and don't forget, name suggestions for the 4 are always welcome in the comments below. Community engagement truly is the backbone of this channel, and I love reading your comments. Thankfully for the Black-Tailed Prairie Dogs, they passed their first health inspection. It's a good thing too, they have plenty of exploring to do. Their log tunnels seem to be their personal favorite enrichment item. They go in here quite often, can't be sure why. To avoid the prairie dog digging too far underground and potentially escaping the habitat, our head North America keeper had to come in here and eliminate a few of their burrows, making sure of course no prairie dogs were inside. As compensation for their hard work, we gave them a watermelon, and they really seemed to like it. This isn't something they would have in the wild, but nonetheless they enjoyed it. That's a thumbnail. Despite this being by far the smallest habitat in all of Keystone Park, if you don't include the exhibits in the reptile house, I think it turned out high quality nonetheless. This is a bit of a different video, very fast paced and a little bit shorter than my normal content. If you guys enjoyed it, let me know in the comments below. I mainly just wanted to put out a bonus episode to get my upload schedule back to Saturday, which I'm used to. We uploaded the seal and sea lions on Tuesday. We should probably let our zookeepers focus on the prairie dogs. It's an adjustment for them too, taking care of a brand new species at the zoo. Luckily for them, I doubt these little guys are going to be much of a problem. If anything, they'll be escape artists, but we built this habitat rock solid. It looks to me like they're a little tuckered out from a long day of exploring though. We should probably let them rest. I really hope the guests enjoy this habitat when it opens to the public next week. I think that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. It was a really fun one to build and record. If you did enjoy the video and you made it this far, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I can't stress enough how much your engagement helps this channel grow. See you guys next week. Kingpin out.